All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Best Self Blueprint. As you all know, the mission of this podcast is to bring on people with the knowledge, insights, and experiences to help you move that dial towards truly becoming the best version of yourself, whatever that means to you. So, this next guest is a well known coach, pastor, and public speaker. Founder of the Good Life Coaching in Atlanta, he's helped countless people improve their lives, from high school students developing leadership skills to couples developing the tools needed for a successful relationship. He's been published on hundreds of media outlets, including the well-known outlets such as NBC, CBS, Fox, USA Today, and more. His extensive knowledge on relationships, leadership, and overall self-development is going to provide a lot of value to you all. So it's time to officially introduce Jimmie Stevens. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, Trevor. Good to be here, man.
I am very excited to have you on. As I mentioned, you're the first real relationship expert I have on. And I mean, you obviously know there are a lot of people who need that advice. So
yeah, it is.
We will jump right into it. My first question is, what do you see as a few commonalities that hold people back from having a successful relationship?
Understanding communication, without a doubt. That is the biggest issue in relationships, is learning to communicate with your partner. And a lot of it, just to give you a short psychology process, if you will. Think about your adolescence, right? You're coming up in your home, your caregivers, whether your mom, dad, grandparents, whoever's caring for you. Those emotional gaps, trauma, what you didn't get from your dad or your mom, those emotions don't leave. We often seek those in our adult relationships. And subconsciously, we're actually seeking people with the same characteristics as our caregivers. We don't do that purposely. It's just subconsciously, because we kind of gravitate toward those people. And then generally when you find like the person you really love, you really involved with, typically it goes like this. It's like I've known them my whole life. And the reason that is because the character traits are so familiar, you don't even pick up on it. Your subconscious does. And that connects you. But how do I talk to this person? How can we connect? That's when we get into issues after what we call the honeymoon stage or romance stage. That's when it gets tight.
Yeah. So how do you, what is the first step in, if there's a lack of communication, if there's a lack of understanding, what's a good first step for people to take to start rebuilding that trust, rebuilding that understanding and solid communication?
First of all, it's understanding that your relationship needs a structure or a system. And I use that practical term such as an SOP, standard operating procedure. That is what we have to have in our relationships. In other words, a standard of how we're going to communicate to each other. Tone, certain uses of words, not using judgmental tones and judgmental words to offend your partner, because your partner will get offended based on how you react to them. So first of all, let's get a structure or system how we will communicate. So with my couples, I teach them, you need a structure, you need a system. And secondly, how does the communication system work? So communication works like this. If you are offended, if you are hurt by your partner, the first thing you have to do is learn, and this is a learned behavior, to speak your feelings and or your intention. That is the most difficult process, because we're taught really to suppress our feelings, not to express them, especially guys, right? So when we go through puberty, this is, you're in the middle school and you're, 6th, 7th grade, mommy love hanging with the family. Once you go through puberty, testosterone, that second dose of testosterone comes in. First dose is at birth, second is at puberty. It actually washes a portion of your brain, which is the emotional side for the male. That's when we disconnect emotionally from that. That's when we're not the touchy-feely kid and somebody comes to hug. It's like, you got that going on because you have disconnected. from that emotional part of your brain. Not that you're not emotional, it's difficult to locate. But a young woman never goes through that. So she's operating off both sides, right? So it's understanding that when you are in that relationship, your wife, partner will think totally different than you. Recognizing that is the first step, right? So that's why when I state my feelings and my emotions, my feelings and my intentions, that allows me then to get it out. Second phase of that is my partner validates my feeling. And this is where we get into problems, Trevor, because if you state to your partner, what you just said made me feel disrespected. Okay. Now, typically what happens when that is, a man will think, well, how can you feel that way? And we're logically trying to understand our mate's feelings. Stop it. You can't do it. You just validate. Your responsibility is to own the act that caused your partner to feel a certain way. Once you own the act and then you validate, your partner says, okay, I can trust him with my feelings because he's received them. He's recognized, he's owned the action. Not to say you did it on purpose, but you're saying, I apologize. That was not my intention. I could see you did feel disrespected. I'm sorry. I won't do that again. That's the third part. We make adjustments. We make sure we don't talk that way, do the very thing that offended them. So what's happening now, we're growing closer in intimacy because why? You can state your feeling and your partner validates. That means, okay, I can trust them. Though that is the main reason why people move further away from each other. And they say, okay, well, it doesn't seem like we don't love the same way we did because when you do not validate your partner's emotions, they begin to erode. They pull back for self-preservation. I mean, your mate and your partner is not going to keep giving you their feelings, and you're going to take it through this ringer of your understanding before you say, okay, I can see that. That's why I tell couples, don't try to understand. If you do, great, but don't try. Validate regardless, because your partner's feelings are valid regardless of your intention. So there's two separate things going on. And so when we get that understanding in the relationship, first of all, there's a structure. We understand how to communicate to each other. That structure I just shared allows you to have a system. State your feelings, state your intention, validate your partner's feelings, and make the appropriate adjustments so that you don't revisit it. And that's the beginning process of growth and intimacy in your relationship. But it is a process, arduous, depending on how emotional you may be in terms of just being led by that subconscious reactionary drive that drives a lot of us. That's really where the challenge is at.
So I really love the fact that this is universal, I think, in any conversation where you may not have meant what they received. However, they received it. And it's up to you to understand if, despite your intention, if what you said to that person upsets them and that's the way they feel, you have to own that.
Right.
I love that part of it.
And it's not an indictment against you. And that's where the real epiphany comes, when you realize that they're not saying you're the culprit. It's just like stepping on someone's foot by accident. You didn't mean to do it. They're hurt. Any sensible person, you're going to apologize for that. So it's your intention versus their experience. And when you communicate, the earnest is on you to communicate to the point that whoever you're communicating to can receive it. So if I have to change what I say and how I say it so that the intended party can receive it, then I need to do that.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, that's something that transcends just your spouse or your partner. I think that like friendships, business partnerships to a stranger. And I think just the ability to communicate effectively so that it's not just what you're saying, it's what they're hearing aligns, I think is so important.
It is. That's the critical part. One of the first rules of speaking is know your audience, right? You want to know what they're dealing with, what they're in, so that what you're saying, they can receive. And that's the same thing, and to your point, in any communication fashion, you want whoever's hearing that information, you want to give it to them in a way they can receive it and comprehend it.
So I'm curious your take, because as a relationship expert, I'm sure you've heard of the book, The 5 Love Languages.
Yes.
How does that apply to like the intent versus how they receive it based on their love language, whether it's like positive affirmations, physical touch, acts of service? How big of a role does that play in this?
It does. I actually use that in my process with my couples. At the end of the first session, I send them that quiz, the love language quiz. First of all, that's a building of the love in the relationship. I use an analogy like if you and your partner are in the woods and it's a cold night and you have a fire going, and both of you want to keep the fire going. Both of you have to work to put the fuel to the fire. In other words, put the wood in the fire. Your act of service toward your partner is that wood in the fire of your relationship. Your partner must be able to receive, and that's typically nonverbal, except for words of affirmation. It does add, because relationships is communication, but it's also the component of receiving love from your partner. That love language is that act. The problem that a lot of us get into is we treat our relationships as if I did it one time and I'm good. It's relationships and love in your relationship is like gas in your tank. If you drove a while, you're going to have to fill it back up. And so you want to kind of have regular feelings. And so what I coach my couples to do is to make sure at least a minimum of 2 times a week, you are feeding your partner their love language. So they're constantly receiving it, because it's all a process. First, the communication. Communication is built, trust is built because you took my feelings and you validated them. Once you've done that, and then now you are receiving, giving and receiving love. Those 2 things, and the third is another component, but those 2 causes a great deal of what I call emotional equity in the relationship to increase, because now you're able to give and then receive as well. And so that's when you don't want to go anywhere, because first of all, they listen to me, I'm validated, and I'm receiving what I receive, whether, to your point, words of affirmation, physical touch, quality time, Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. Those things cause us to kind of receive. And once you're receiving that love from your partner, you're feeling like, yeah, this feels really good, right? You're actually embracing a process. And let me say this, because a lot of times guys don't think this is important, but it's like going without for so long. And I say without because a lot of times men, we have this perception of, I'm gonna handle it, I'm good. But when your mate knows your love language and they start ministering it to you, you're feeling good. It's a whole different world. But in your relationship, it just gives you more wind to be able to perform and do what you want to do for your partner.
So much good content in there. So the next question I have is, because I completely agree with what you're saying, where it's up to both people. It's not, I don't think, always going to be exactly 50-50. Sometimes it's 60-40,
Right.
70-30, 80-20.
110.
But it still comes down to both people still putting in effort
That's it.
consistently.
Yeah.
However, I think in relationships, just like anything in life, so as a health coach, a fitness coach, a lot of people hit plateaus. And so it's at that point where I always say, go back to your why.
Right.
Find your why. Find that deep reason as to like what's going to reignite that inner fire of like why are you doing this in the first place? Is that the
Right.
same with relationships, where you should say like, well, why are you putting in this effort?
Well, typically here's the irony of it. And a lot of things can be interchanged, but in relationships, I don't think it's a plateau where you kind of reach where you're doing the same thing, you're like kind of dull. It's intimacy is being built. The emotional cavity, our psyche, where we're at, it's an inner consistent thirst. Oh, is that me?
Yeah.
What? Dang. Okay. I don't know how to. So yeah. So hold on, Trevor. I don't know. Okay.
All right. So we took a brief pause. There was a mystery phone call coming out of nowhere, but we're back.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Now, what? Yeah, the plateau. So the difference between that is that there's a inner consistent craving in us. So as I am growing in terms of building my relationship with my partner, the more I build the equity, emotional equity, it builds intimacy. Intimacy is being built up when I can be, and I use this word, emotionally naked. When I can get to that point, that's the vulnerable part. That's the part that we really don't go into is, okay, what am I hiding? What am I not facing myself that I deal with? That is the issue, right? And that's when we realize that allows us to then start making the necessary steps, if you will, to say, okay, this is my issue. These are things I'm dealing with. And because the equity is built up, I can express that to my partner. That's when you're building that state where, okay, now I'm really enjoying this relationship, because it's almost a spiritual encounter to a certain extent, to where just imagine getting to a place in your life where you are now not hiding anything from yourself or your partner, right? That's because I like it's a Japanese proverb that says we have three faces. One we show outside the home, one we show inside the home, and one we show to ourselves. And the one we show to ourselves is the real one. But getting to the place where you can show yourself, the real you, to your partner. So there's a growth process to that. The key is being able to get to that point where you can begin to grow and receive that level of love and intimacy.
Yeah, and I think you'll agree with this, but correct me if this is totally off base. But I think an important part of a successful relationship is self-work. Because if you're not working on yourself and you don't really know yourself, it's hard to bring that emotionally naked version of who you are to that relationship. And yeah, so I think it's so important to, like you talk about, like know what your baggage is, like know what you're trying to hide, but at the same point, like work on that stuff. Yeah.
Right. The thing is, to your point, what I do in terms of even helping couples, right? The thing about relationship coaching and counseling is this: it is personal. It's more personal because you're working on yourself. In the healing process of you is really what you're doing to your partner. So as I go with my partner, if I go with my partner, if I minister to my partner, then what happens is it allows first of all, healing to come to me, because the process of reciprocity is, as I'm helping my partner, so I'm helping myself. So it is a growth process, and emotional growth is really what it is. To be able to detach from that subconscious emotional state of kicking back. That's, in other words, when I say kicking back, just getting to a point where you can say, okay, I am going to not just react emotionally. I'm going to rationally think about this. And as I rationally think about it, that's going to add context. That's going to add the ability for me to be able to express the feeling I need to express.
Man, there was so much good stuff in there for any couple who is struggling with communication, is struggling with trust, or if you're struggling by yourself, like, there was so much good stuff in there. But dialing more into the self, one quote I would love for you to explain, because I think this is just phenomenal. I love what you said. Everything that's created has everything it needs to grow. So can you talk about that, especially like in terms of the human experience?
Oh, okay. So basically, in our experience, when I say our experience, just everything God has created in the earth is in seed form. Everything comes in seed, right? We came here 400 trillion rather to one. We're here, right? We came in as seeds. There's seed everywhere. The key is understanding the process of growth, which is this. Everything inherently in us. We don't need anything in terms of any outside thing to grow. What we really need is to recognize that what we have it in seed form. Great relationships are in seed form. Health is in seed form. Those six-pack abs are in seed form, right? Everything is in seed form. However, as I work to actually develop it, that's when I'm winning, right? So when I'm developing the process, knowing that my relationship can be healthy if I do the work. My physical body can change if I do the work. My bank account can change if I do the work. It's the work process, the seed process, right? Seeds have to be placed in a position that, in terms of just like if you put in the seed in soil, the water in the sun, what happens is it breaks the seed so that what's in the seed can come out. And in our relationships and in our goals and our ambitions, it's understanding rational thought. I think our rational thoughts become our seed. In other words, the idea comes. Now, the work starts. The work is breaking down the thing that's causing you not to progress and to grow. That could be your time management. That could be relationships. That could be not engaging in certain things that's really bringing you down, whether it's depression, whatever. We want to get those things out the way, right? So that we can now develop what it is we have in our hands, which is the idea of what I want to be, the idea of what type of life I want to live, what type of relationship I want. And when I say what type and what kind, I'm talking about the character, the core. How do you want to experience relationship with your partner? Do you want peace? Do you want the relationship that when you are going through something, you can express it to them and they're going to receive it unconditionally, just like you will receive them unconditionally? That's the process. It's all in us. We have the capability. The human mind, the human body is designed to adapt. And so it will adapt to anything.
Yeah, I think a big part of that, though, is what you focus on grows. And what you focus on is really your reality, or at least your perception of your reality. And unfortunately, I mean, people have to understand, evolutionarily speaking, we have a negative information bias.
Yeah.
So it is an uphill battle at the start.
Yeah.
If you've spent your whole life cultivating this like, or I should say, leaning into this negative information bias, it's an
Right.
uphill battle to switch tracks and get on the positivity train and get on focusing on the things you're talking about, which is focusing on that ideal self and focusing on actually what it'll take work wise, mentality wise, relationship wise to get to that version of who you are. And
Yeah.
that's really the core of what this show is about, is trying to,
Yeah.
put the pieces in place to uncover that path. And then that's all we can really do. It's up to the person then to travel the path.
It, without a doubt. And to your point, that's exactly what it is understanding, first of all, understanding that, and I share that with my couples too, that very statement, that there is a negative bias that we have. And so in relationship, and that's the third part of what I share with couples. I actually did this years ago. Compound Effect. Darren Hardy wrote a book. I read it years ago. You got it. And he talks about the journal, writing a thank you note to his wife. I heard that years ago, and I did the same thing. And I did it for like 300. Same thing. Started January, did it up until November, Thanksgiving Day of that year. So every day I'm writing notes of thanks to my wife. What it did to me was it caused me to focus on the good. So even though I was not in a state of like, okay, I really don't, I was never in an emotional state where I'm not valuing my wife, but in terms of seeing what she was doing, my perception of her, my value of her in respect increased, because all I'm doing is writing these notes of thanks. And so with my couples, that's the third part of the process I share with them, is writing getting a journal and writing a note of thanks for at least 60 days to your partner, because it changes your perception, changes your focus, changes your perception. Because life is designed, how we view a thing is how we go through a thing. So if I see my wife or my partner or my husband, whoever your partner is, in the light of value and respect, that changes, again, how I'm going to respond to them in a communication fashion. I'm going to give them grace. I'm going to engage in a rational way. I'm also willing to share this love language with them, because now I'm seeing them differently. Because for 20 days or 30 days, I've been writing about how great they are, these notes of thanks. And that's a purposeful effort in focusing. And that's where I think that's probably the biggest opportunity in a lot of our lives, is really consciously, rationally engaging. I say it in relationship, but really rationally engaging in your own life. So you're cognitively saying, okay, what am I thankful for today? And writing it down, so that you have an attitude of gratitude, which changes your perception, which changes your actions. And so that two there is probably one of the greatest things we can do in terms of just changing how we view life.
That is so true. So I come at it from a mindfulness perspective, as a mindfulness and meditation coach, but along the lines of what you're saying. So I'm single. I was single at the point of reading The Compound Effect.
Right.
But what I did is I took that idea and I implemented it with friends and with mentors. And so at least once a week, and I continue to do this. I read that book well over a year ago. And once a week, I write a good page letter to someone just saying how much I appreciate them.
Right.
And I think the problem with this is it's in the detail. So it's one thing to just shoot a text to a friend and say, hey man, I appreciate you. It's another to list and go in detail all the reasons why you appreciate them, because that shows the level of attention you're giving to that person.
Right.
And so that's something I want people to take away, is like, yeah, it's important to give appreciation, but it's also important to give attention to the detail. And I think that is what adds the intensity to the emotion.
Right. And they're receiving twofold, because they're happy they got it. Right. But for you, it's the actual act of focus that increases your gratitude and your and your respect level, it goes up because you're focusing. It's always been there, but to lasers to say, okay, I'm going to write my buddy a letter here. He's been with me for years, and he's just been such an impact in my life just being there. And I'm writing about the experiences that we've had and the support that he showed up. That's blessing him without a doubt. But for me, it's like, yes, I'm so grateful for this person. That's the whole different mindset in terms of how I approach him, how I approach the relationship, because again, I'm approaching it from a position of gratitude, thankfulness. I'm not just discounting all he has, all the things that he hasn't done, because to your point, that negative position, we tend to pull everything negative in. And that's what we remember. That's what we're thinking about. So it takes effort and work to say, today, I'm writing a note of thanks to whoever. And I tend to practice that in terms of if there's a struggling relationship I'm with that I need to kind of get out of that dump. That's when I'm, okay, let me do some things in terms of focusing on what this person has done, so that when I don't discount all they've done, because they may have jacked up on it at the back end. I don't discount the years because of the fact that I'm practicing the gratitude portion.
Yeah, that's huge. And again, the reason I love having you on specifically is, yes, you're a relationship coach with an emphasis on helping couples, but I think a lot of this translates to friendships and just relationships in general.
Yeah.
And as we talk about like making sure that you have a healthy relationship with your spouse, with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, I think it's important to take this intentionality and put it into all your relationships and gauge, like,
yeah,
are you really being intentional about your words, your actions in the relationships you have in life? So I think that's so important.
Yeah. We tend to approach relationships in all relationships from a self-preservation mode. It's all about me. Can't be about you. And that's when we get into issues. When it's all about me, my survival, that's when that relationship process is going to crumble, because relationships are designed for reciprocity. It's the two are better than one. It's understanding that we can get more to get accomplished together than we can apart. It's really coming together and realizing that, I am here to empower you, to help you, to push you. And then at the same time, there should be some reciprocity. But what happens is some of us sometimes can get into relationships that are self-serving for the other person or for us. And that's when it's not fair. That's when it's not good, because at that point, you're not benefiting the other person, or the other person isn't benefiting you. It should be a two-way street here. And that keeps us out of the selfishness arena and puts us in a position of, okay, how can I add value to this individual? And that's my take in any relationship. When I'm meeting somebody, how can I add value? How can I give them some wind? How can I help them down where they want to go? So that allows me to say, okay, if I'm analyzing this person right when I first met him and I'm looking at him, okay, I know my strength, my skill set can help him in this area. So I will add value in some type of way so that they're moving down the road, so to speak, utilizing what's inside of me to help them out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny. As weird of an example as this is the way I view friendships. So is it when you were a kid and you were on the trampoline, you know how if there was you and someone else, you could double bounce someone and they would just skyrocket? Right. So I always think about, I want the friend who's going to double bounce me, not the friend who's going to jump right before I do so I don't get any air at all.
Yeah, without a doubt.
But then on the same end of things, like, you can't just expect to take that, like you're talking about, like, you have to be the double jumper. Like, you have to be the one to skyrocket your friends too.
Yes, that's about, man. I'm fascinated by, I love studying people. And that's what got me into relationships and relationship coaching, because the deficit that we have, in other words, we're all hurting to some degree, and it's recognizing that just like you're hurting and missing out on certain things, so is someone else. And the tragedy and the thing about relationships is this: it's so crazy. The people who we're closest to are the ones we do not engage in rational thought with. It is a negative space of emotional reactions, and we hurt them the worst. If I had a rough day at the office and I'm coming home and I'm internalizing all of this stuff, and I haven't reached a point where I can express my feelings to my partner when I get home, I'm taking all of that out on them. And that's when we don't realize there are no mulligans in relationships. Those emotional darts and hits, they wear down your partner, and to the point that now they're emotionally disconnecting. And that's because we're not aware of the true people in our lives who we should save all that personality for, all that, how you doing, and that.
Oh, your audio cut out.
Not for.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. So those things should be for the space of our partners. They should not, in other words, all the personality, all the, how we can, the persona, the charisma. You meet somebody for the first time, all very energetic, get home, you're a dud. You don't say anything. You don't want to talk to anybody. That's the kind of stuff that we got backwards. Yeah. If anything, I'm supposed to bring my best to my partner and save the rest for everybody else. But we have it opposite for the most part.
Yeah, holy cow. I completely agree with that. So I do a practice. Now, I'm not going to claim I'm perfect. Just like every other human being on the planet, have bad days. I go into things just grumpy sometimes, but I have a practice called RMT. So it's reset meditation therapy. And it's just a quick 1 to 2 minute practice. Anyone can do it. So the first half of it, it's a box breathing meditation. You just release tension from your jaw, your neck, your shoulders, the places that we just naturally tend to hold tension.
Okay.
Once you do that, then the second half, you set an intention for whatever you're about to do next. So I do this before I go to work, before I start my workout, before I come back home, before I'm hanging out with friends, before I hop on these awesome calls. And it gives you the chance to go from reaction to being proactive. And that is such a powerful tool to have in the toolkit, because it's not going to allow you to bring that negative energy that you've accumulated throughout your stressful day and go dump it on the people that you're cohabitating with.
Right. Because I like the intentionality part of that, right? That's when we don't get sidetracked with whatever sidetracks us. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, it's I think this whole thing has been some pretty good stuff, and we will wrap it up. But before that, just because obviously I think even if you have a good relationship, I still think it's beneficial to talk to a relationship coach to see if there's things you can still work on. So where can people go to connect with you if they have questions?
A couple of places. If they're on Instagram, Jimmie.Stevens, JIMMIE.Stevens, STEPHENS, or go to my website, TGLJIMMIE.com, TGLJimmie.com. Reach me there, Instagram, Facebook, same handle.
Awesome. So as a single person, if I got stuff out of this, for anyone out there who's in a relationship, I can guarantee you got something out of that. So, so I always wrap up with a final two, but I'm actually, I don't know if you've seen any of my other episodes, but I have a new kind of space. So I figured new space, new question. So I used to ask, what's the biggest obstacle between you and your best self? But I want to ask you, what is the next step for you in becoming the best version of yourself?
The next step for me, honestly, is really scaling where I'm at now. It is a process where I'm in a space where I have more things to do than I ever had before. So it's basically driving through that process, driving through meaning, okay, need to be here by a certain amount of days in terms of systems and structures to get to that space. So that's where I'm at now, in terms of that's in front of me that I'm working on, in terms of getting so that I can get more of this message out to a larger audience, because so many people suffer with these things. And I look at it honestly as a ministry, but more so as a mission, because so many people suffer silently with these issues. And so I just want to make sure I can at least give them content and exposure to start making adjustments in their life.
I think that's so awesome. Like to be that aligned and that confident in like who you are, why you're here, what you're doing. And you're like, I'm doing all the right things. Now I just want to do more of it. Like, I think that is so awesome. I'm in a similar boat, and it's really cool to meet people like myself who are like, and you can agree with this. You just know there is no doubt in your mind. And now it's just a matter of, all right, how big of an impact can I actually make doing this?
Yeah. And I have a mantra I tell myself. I say I'm the dopest cat in this business. People just don't know it. And so when you have that mentality, then it's not about anyone else, right? It's about knowing what's inside of you that's going to benefit people. I found that the more people are hearing me, the easier they connect. So it's when I connect with people, when I have clients, couples, and it's crazy for me to see stuff that I have, that I've utilized, that I would share with friends. And if I'm meeting with one of my congregation members about marriage or relationships, things that was for me was pretty, okay, this is just how you do it. But this is one of the biggest things I got out of life. If I'm right here and say, you got people right here, the people who are right here do not know what I know right here. And there are people ahead of me. So it's my obligation to give to all these people what I know. And don't assume that what you know, everybody else knows. That's really the mission in terms of, I think anyone doing content is really understanding everyone doesn't know what you know. And we have so many answers. We just don't know the person is next to us because they assume that, no one wants to hear about this. Someone needs an answer. We live in a knowledge consumer-based economy now. It's all about what you know. Can I share this? Will it benefit? Will it help somebody? And that's what you got to get to. That's what you got to focus on.
And I cannot more aggressively agree with what you just said about obligation. That's something. So every day I do a video journal. So I essentially just pull up my phone, talk into it for a few minutes, just spit out kind of what I'm thinking about. And just a few days ago, I got pretty into it. I started talking about, how selfish of me would it be to put all this work, have all these conversations, do all these things to get these pieces to the puzzle of optimizing your life on all platforms and keep it for myself and not share with anybody anything I've learned. Like, I love what you talk about. Like, there is an obligation. If you really want to make sure that the world is better off for you being here, you need to make sure that you're sharing with the world what you're learning while you're here. And so I absolutely love that. So
it's a mandate, man. I think it comes that we push it a little bit. We got to have our own narrative to push ourselves further. So that's my mantra, right? So that drives me. That says when I'm feeling like I don't feel like doing nothing, okay, I don't have to develop content. I don't have to do that class. I don't have to record that stuff. Those type of ideas of that self-sabotaging mentality, it can't stay in the same frame of mind of someone who says, I'm the dopest cat in the industry. Folks just don't know about me yet. When that's going on, it's a driving force. I just got to make sure people know about me.
Absolutely, man. I'm hoping through this more people learn about you, because that's how I found you, is through your content. So
yeah,
it's amazing. I have one last question, this is my favorite question. I will likely keep this question on here forever, as long as I'm doing this podcast.
Okay.
So if you could challenge whoever's listening to do one thing in the next week or so that, when completed, will better themselves or their life in some way, what would you challenge the audience to do?
I would challenge anyone who's listening, who has a lifelong partner, who has a mate, a partner, or anybody you're with. I would challenge you to think of something small that you can do in a radical big way for them. Something small in a radical big way. And I say radically big because I want you to think, what is small? Doesn't cost a lot, but I can do it in a huge way. And that will benefit someone else, and money back guaranteed. It will be the best thing that you've experienced in quite some time, because when you are focusing on somebody else to do something great for somebody else, it fuels you. It puts wind in your sail. It puts fire in your oven. So the key is making someone else your project of excitement, where they can just, their whole day or week or month or year for that matter is made because of what you did that day.
Oh, that is so awesome. So two things. The first one, I'm single, so I don't necessarily have someone to do that specific for, but I definitely can do that for a friend, for a family member. So
yes,
I always tell the guests, it would just be stupid and ignorant of me not to take you up on these challenges myself. Okay. So I will definitely, do that small thing, and I will blow it to the max proportions.
Yes.
For somebody. The second thing, and I really want people to listen to this, what he talked about, where like being selfless is really selfish. Like, that is why, like, I love writing those letters to friends. I love doing acts of service. I love coaching people, because when you're giving and you're like helping people, it is the best feeling ever. And that, like, selfishly, that's a big reason why I do it, is because of how good it feels to help other people in any way you can.
Without a doubt, man. I think it's, and it's reciprocity. I'm giving. The scripture says like this: it's more blessed to give than receive. And people don't get that until they're doing it. You don't get that until you are really when I say giver, I mean your whole goal is to give of yourself to benefit someone else. And when they're receiving it, and I cannot tell you how many times when I'm talking to couples, and the highlight is when I'm talking to somebody and they're saying, when we first talked to you, I told you this is it, or I'm getting a divorce. And to have them 8-9 weeks down the road say, this is the best relationship, marriage. I didn't even think this was possible. And then to have them remind me, don't you remember I said I was going to get a divorce about 8 or 9 weeks ago? And I hear story after story after story. And for me, those moments, I wish I could just bottle them, right? And just because that is instant fuel. And it came because I desired to use what I knew, that I experienced, that I knew would impact someone else's life. I made it a mission to share it, to make sure they knew where I was, so that I could give them that content and coach them and counsel them through challenging processes, and to get to that point. So it is all about you giving. That's the fuel that keeps you going.
I 100% agree. Man, I am so happy I got you for,
Hey,
this period of time. For anyone listening who's gotten to the end of this, if you didn't get anything out of this, you were not paying attention. If you did not get anything out of this, you need to go back and watch it again because you missed something.
yeah,
Jimmie, I want to
yeah,
thank you for taking the time, but more than that, like I want to thank you just in the hour that we've gotten to talk. Your authenticity is so far above, the standard nowadays. It is crazy. Like just talking to you, even not even face to face
right,
over Zoom,
yeah,
you're just
right,
radiating how sincerely you want to better the lives of as many people as possible. I'm the same
yeah,
way. And I
yeah,
can't thank you enough because I think the more people like you that we can get doing acts of service, helping in any
right,
way that they can, the better
yeah,
off we're going to be as a population. So I
right.
want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for the time and effort you've put into honing your craft. It's very obvious you know what you're talking about. You are what is it, the baddest cat?
The baddest cat in this business, man. I just people don't know. So it's about working it and pushing it.
I like it. Well, hopefully more people know now. So I want to
Yeah,
thank you for all of that. For anyone listening, if you got something out of this, or you go and do this challenge, come back, comment, let me know. Otherwise, reach out to Jimmie, reach out to me on social media.
yeah,
I'm assuming he's like me. Like, I love hearing those
yeah.
stories. I love hearing
It,
that stuff.
it's fuel, it's juice for me because when you know something works, right? When you know that this is the simplest, easiest thing to do is just take a person, make them your project, take your partner, make them your project, take your family member, make them your project, take your coworker, your friend, make them your project. Just do something great, grand for no reason. It doesn't have to be expensive, just small. Those type of things, you really get what life is about. Not looking for repayment, not looking for you to do anything for me because I did that for you. I just want to do it, to your point, selfishly. I want to receive the fuel, the excitement of watching your experience, watching the joy come out of you. And when that happens, that's when you are winning, right? That's when you're like, wow, this was really cool just watching you do experience this thing. And that's what life is about. I think when we approach it like that, we disconnect from these crazy ideas that we have about what life is supposed to be versus what life actually is.
So true. So I want to just like last thing before we sign off, I want to let people know whatever area of life you need coaching in, find a coach like Jimmie. Find a coach who's not in it to take your money from you. I mean,
Yeah.
they are going to. It's how they make a living. But you
Right.
need to find a coach, and you can tell there is just a
Right.
certain thing that you can pick up on when you
Right.
know that coach is in it for you. When they're trying to
Right.
help you, that's who
Yeah.
you want to go with.
Right.
So that's my last piece of advice for everyone who's gotten to this point. Thank you so much for listening. Again, comment any questions, comments, agreements, disagreements you have with us. I'm always happy to hear those.
Definitely.
And I can guarantee you there's someone you know in your life in a relationship. Odds are that relationship, as good as it is, it's not perfect. There's always something
Yeah.
you can work on. There's always something you can improve. Share this with them. They make the share button
Yeah.
for a reason. I say this every time. There's someone who can learn from this video that you know. So, other
Yeah.
than that, thank you everybody for listening, and we will talk to you next time.